Donald Trump has always struggled when reality doesn't line up with his version of events. This latest development hits that point hard, because the facts here directly contradict what he repeatedly claims, and they're coming straight from an ordinary working American, the kind of person he'd rather overwhelm or quiet down with his influence and resources. I'll walk you through the details in a moment. But first, it's worth noting how consistently Trump holds on to his own narrative, even when it's built on thin air and ignores verifiable evidence. Take this kind of statement he makes. He insists he's the stronger choice when it comes to supporting organized labor. He argues that the real danger to union jobs comes from large numbers of people crossing into the country illegally, which he says wipes out protected employment opportunities. He even suggests that people like Sean O'Brien from the Teamsters can see that threat clearly. The record tells a different story, Donald. Your policies and approach have done far more to weaken the foundation of middle-class union families than to protect them. That's why it's refreshing and important when someone with genuine expertise in the labor world pushes back directly. One seasoned union voice put it plainly. It's completely fair to say that President Joe Biden was the single most supportive president toward unions in my entire lifetime. The only problem? Biden himself wasn't a candidate this time around? Exactly right. Biden followed through with real actions that benefited union members and working people across the board. Then you look at Trump's record. Dismissed. You're out. Get gone. And consider the official position from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters themselves. They announced they would not be endorsing any presidential candidate in this election cycle. Neither former President Trump nor Vice President Harris managed to secure enough backing from the union's 1.3 million members to win their support. For context, remember that the same union did formally endorse President Biden back in 2020. Not long ago, we also saw a striking moment at a UAW Ford plant. A worker there stood up during Trump's visit and called him out directly, labeling him as someone protecting serious offenders against children. Trump, in his characteristic manner, responded without much grace or restraint. Though parts of the exchange weren't fully audible to everyone, his message was unmistakable. You're fired. Get out of here. You're fired. And he directed a vulgar gesture right at the man. But here's the key, Donald. You don't get to fire reality itself. You can't simply wave away uncomfortable truths. Was the Trump administration ever genuinely supportive of unions or of the National Labor Relations Board that protects workers' rights? The answer is no. It was, in practice, one of the most consistently anti-union administrations we've seen, standing in complete opposition to the pro-worker steps taken under President Biden. Now we come to this very recent and significant update. When Trump and his team attempted to pressure the firing of that same Ford plant worker who had spoken out so boldly, what happened? A senior leader in the UAW stepped in firmly and said in no uncertain terms, that's not going to happen here. Take a look at this powerful recent video clip. It's worth watching closely. As most viewers already know, Donald Trump made a visit in January to the Ford Dearborn truck plant, which falls under UAW Local 600. During that stop, one worker on the floor, someone who wasn't afraid to speak plainly, told Trump exactly how he felt about him. Unfortunately, the president's reaction in that moment laid bare his attitude toward everyday working Americans. He responded with an obscene hand gesture and used crude language that I won't repeat word for word here today. Yes, he said, "You're fired," more than once, along with other dismissive remarks. But this isn't an episode of a television show where someone gets sent home at a whim. It took genuine courage for that employee, TJ Sabula, to stand face-to-face with the most powerful person on earth at the time and voice his unfiltered opinion. TJ, know that a lot of people have your back on this. And TJ understands very well that the United Auto Workers Union stands solidly behind him, fully supporting his right to express those views. Freedom of speech isn't just a slogan, it's a real principle, and it's protected here. Speaking as the vice president responsible for the Ford department within the UAW, I can state clearly, TJ still has his job secure and intact. More importantly, there is zero discipline on his employment record. No write-ups, no penalties, nothing. That's correct. That's exactly right. And that's precisely what strong unions do best. They represent and defend their members when it counts most. It reminds me of that iconic scene from the classic film Norma Ray, where Sally Field's character stands up for what's right. That's the heart of real unionism. Not about lowering standards or shielding people who avoid pulling their weight. No, it's fundamentally about this. No one should have unchecked power to silence or remove someone just because they refuse to bow down or stay quiet. You lose that leverage when the person isn't under your direct control and won't be intimidated. Day after day, in my view, we're going to see more and more everyday people stepping forward, like that UAW worker who come from places like Minnesota, Maine, or anywhere else in the country. They're simply exhausted with the idea that Donald Trump can point a finger, issue a command, and expect someone to vanish or fall silent. I also noticed the pattern in some of the responses online. People saying things like, immigration enforcement wouldn't even be necessary if folks just stayed in their home countries. That's exactly the mindset some are pushing, to clamp down on the entire nation, enforce strict controls, almost like imposing a state of emergency rule. But that approach isn't going to work. The UAW's stand here proves it loud and clear. They drew a firm line and held it. If this breakdown makes sense to you, hit that like button, share the video with others who need to hear it, and stay sharp out there. We'll keep watching these developments closely. Thanks for being here.